All right, we're diving into some pretty interesting stuff today. Direct bilirubin. Now, you might be here because your doctor mentioned it, or maybe you're just curious about how your body works. Either way, we're going to break it all down using some medical texts as our guide. What it is, what it does, and why those numbers on your lab report matter. So, have you ever thought about what happens to your red blood cells when they get old?
Well, it's quite a fascinating process, actually. Red blood cells, you see, they have a limited lifespan, about 120 days. As they age, they get broken down and the body recycles their parts. And one of the byproducts of that breakdown is bilirubin.
So it's like a natural
Yeah,
recycling system.
exactly. It's crucial for keeping everything running smoothly. Now, there are two main types of this bilirubin. There's unconjugated, also known as indirect bilirubin, and then there's conjugated bilirubin, which we also call direct bilirubin. And that's what we're focusing on today.
Right, direct bilirubin. And I've heard the liver is involved in all of this somehow.
Absolutely. The liver is key here. Think of it as a processing plant for bilirubin. It takes the unconjugated bilirubin, which isn't water-soluble, and converts it into conjugated bilirubin, which is water-soluble, so that it can be excreted from the body.
So the liver is like a waste management system.
Yeah.
It takes this potentially harmful stuff and makes it safe to get rid of.
Precisely. And by measuring the amount of direct bilirubin in your blood, we can get a good idea of how well your liver is working.
Ah, so that's why doctors measure it in blood tests. It's like a window into liver health.
Exactly, a key indicator. The normal range for direct bilirubin is typically pretty low, somewhere between zero 0.1 and 0.3 milligrams per deciliter. Anything significantly higher than that, well, it could indicate a problem.
So if my direct bilirubin is high, should I, be worried?
Well, not necessarily. It's important to remember that a lab result is just one piece of the puzzle. Elevated direct bilirubin isn't a diagnosis on its own, but it is a signal that something might be going on and warrants further investigation.
So what could cause high direct bilirubin? We touched on liver inflammation earlier.
Right, liver inflammation is a common culprit, and this can be caused by a bunch of different things. Viral infections like hepatitis, excessive alcohol consumption, certain medications, even autoimmune conditions where the body's immune system actually attacks the liver.
I've also heard that gallstones can cause problems with bilirubin levels too.
You're absolutely right. Gallstones can actually block the bile ducts, and those are the channels that carry bile, which includes a bilirubin, from the liver to the intestines. So if that flow is obstructed, it can lead to a buildup of direct bilirubin in the blood.
So basically, any plumbing problems can throw things off.
They certainly can, and in some cases, high direct bilirubin can even be a sign of rarer conditions, like certain genetic disorders that affect how bilirubin is metabolized.
Wow, so there are a lot of potential causes for elevated direct bilirubin.
There are. That's why it's so important to work with a healthcare professional to figure out the underlying cause and come up with the right treatment plan.
Now, what about the flip side? What if someone's direct bilirubin is low? Is that ever a cause for concern?
Well, low direct bilirubin on its own is usually not clinically significant. It might even go unnoticed in most cases. However, there are specific situations where it can be a clue. For example, if someone has high total bilirubin, but their direct bilirubin is low, it might suggest that their red blood cells are breaking down too quickly, which would lead to an increase in unconjugated bilirubin.
So even though low direct bilirubin isn't usually a red flag on its own,
Yeah.
it's still a piece of information that doctors consider along with other findings.
Exactly. It's all about putting the pieces of the puzzle together.
This is really fascinating. It's like direct bilirubin is a tiny messenger, giving us insights into what's happening inside our bodies.
That's a great way to think about it. And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore what happens when those messages point to a problem. We'll delve into the diagnostic process and the various treatment options available.
Sounds good. We'll be back soon with part 2 of our direct bilirubin deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive on direct bilirubin. Last time we were talking about how direct bilirubin can be a signal, alerting doctors to potential issues.
Right, like a little check engine light for the liver.
Right.
So what happens next? If someone's direct bilirubin is high or low, what does the doctor do to figure out what's going on?
Well, it starts with a thorough medical history.
Yeah.
And a physical exam. The doctor's going to ask you about any symptoms you've been experiencing, your overall health, any medications you're taking, your lifestyle habits, all of that.
So it's not just about the numbers, it's about the whole picture.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then, based on that initial assessment, they'll probably order some additional tests to really get a clearer picture of your liver health.
Like liver function tests. I've seen those on my blood work. What are those actually looking for?
Ah, yes. Liver function tests, or LFTs for short, they measure the levels of certain enzymes and proteins in your blood that are released by the liver. These tests can help identify inflammation or damage, or even just dysfunction in the liver.
So if those tests come back abnormal, does that mean there's like serious liver damage?
Not necessarily, no. Abnormal LFTs can be caused by all sorts of things, some of them pretty benign and others more serious. It's all about interpreting those results, in the context of your overall clinical picture.
Okay, so not a reason to panic, but definitely a sign to investigate further.
Precisely. And depending on the situation, the doctor might also order some imaging studies, like an ultrasound, a CT scan, or an MRI, to get a visual look at the liver and bile ducts.
I can see how those would be helpful,
Yeah.
to actually see things like gallstones or blockages.
Exactly. They can give a lot of valuable information about the structure and function of the biliary system.
So let's say the doctor has figured out what's causing the abnormal direct bilirubin levels. What happens then? What are the treatment options?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Because, as we mentioned earlier, the treatment approach really depends on the underlying cause.
So there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Not at all. Let's say, for example, the elevated direct bilirubin is due to a viral infection like hepatitis. In that case, the treatment would focus on managing the infection with antiviral medications and supportive care to allow the liver to heal.
And what about those cases where lifestyle factors like alcohol consumption are contributing to the problem?
That's a great question. In those situations, the most important thing is to eliminate the source of the damage, which means abstaining from alcohol. The liver is actually amazingly resilient. It has an incredible capacity to regenerate. So removing that damaging agent can really allow it to recover.
So there's hope for recovery even if someone's been, damaging their liver for a while.
Absolutely, the liver is a true survivor.
Yeah.
Of course, the extent of recovery really depends on how severe the damage is and other individual factors. But giving the liver a chance to heal can make a huge difference.
That's good to hear. Now, what about when the problem is a blockage in the bile duct? How are those treated?
Blockages can be a bit trickier. They often require a more interventional approach. For example, if the blockage is caused by gallstones, the most common treatment is surgical removal of the gallbladder.
So no more gallstones, no more blockage. Problem solved.
In most cases, yes. The gallbladder isn't essential for survival, so removing it usually doesn't cause any major problems.
Interesting. I remember you mentioning something called ERCP for blockages.
Yeah.
What is that exactly?
Yes, ERCP. That stands for endoscopic retrograde cholangiopancreatography. It's a mouthful, I know, but it's a minimally invasive procedure where they insert a thin, flexible tube with a camera and some instruments on the end, through the mouth, down the esophagus, and into the small intestine, where the bile duct enters.
So they can actually see the blockage and potentially remove it.
Exactly. The instruments allow them to remove stones, or widen narrowed ducts, or even place stents to keep the bile flowing freely. It's a pretty remarkable technique.
It sounds pretty high-tech. What about those rare genetic conditions that can cause problems with direct bilirubin? What are the treatment options for those?
Well, for many genetic disorders that affect bilirubin metabolism, things like Gilbert syndrome, Rotor syndrome, or Dubin-Johnson syndrome, the focus is really on managing the symptoms and providing supportive care.
So they might not be curable, but they can be managed.
Exactly. A lot of these conditions are relatively benign and don't necessarily require any specific interventions. Regular monitoring of liver function and bilirubin levels is usually recommended, though, just to make sure everything stays stable.
So knowledge is power, even when it comes to genetic conditions. Understanding what you're dealing with can help you make informed decisions about your health.
Absolutely. And that brings us to an important point. We've talked about all the different causes of abnormal direct bilirubin and the different treatment approaches, but regardless of the specific situation, there are things everyone can do to support their liver health.
Okay, so what are some things people can do to keep their liver happy and healthy?
Well, a lot of it comes down to the basics: maintaining a healthy weight, eating a balanced diet rich in fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, and limiting alcohol consumption.
So all those lifestyle choices we hear about all the time really do matter.
They really do. And there's also growing evidence that certain foods, like cruciferous vegetables, garlic, and turmeric, might actually have specific benefits for liver health and bilirubin metabolism.
Interesting. So those are worth adding to the grocery list. Anything else people should keep in mind?
Yeah, it's important to be mindful of medications too, both prescription and over-the-counter. Some medications can be hard on the liver, so it's always a good idea to talk to your doctor about any potential risks.
Good point. Always better to be safe than sorry when it comes to medications.
And of course, if you have any concerns about your liver health, or you notice any unusual symptoms, don't hesitate to reach out to your healthcare provider. They can give you personalized guidance and answer any questions you might have.
This has been incredibly informative. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the diagnostic process to treatment options and even tips for supporting liver health.
It's been a fascinating journey into the world of direct bilirubin. And in the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore some of the broader implications of this tiny molecule, including its surprising role in protecting our health.
I can't wait to hear more. Join us for the final installment of our direct bilirubin deep dive. All right, welcome back to our deep dive into direct bilirubin. We've talked about how it's formed, how it's measured, and what can cause those levels to fluctuate. But you mentioned something pretty interesting at the end of last time, a protective role for direct bilirubin. I gotta say, that really caught my attention. I mean, isn't bilirubin generally considered just a waste product?
Yeah, that's a pretty common misconception. While bilirubin is a byproduct of red blood cell breakdown, it's not just some useless substance our body's trying to get rid of. In fact, more and more research is showing that direct bilirubin actually has some surprising benefits, particularly its role as an antioxidant.
Wait, hold on. Antioxidant, like blueberries and green tea. What does direct bilirubin do that's beneficial?
Well, to understand that, we need to talk about oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is basically an imbalance in the body between the production of free radicals and our ability to neutralize them.
Free radicals, right? Those are the ones that can damage cells and contribute to aging and disease.
Exactly. Free radicals are unstable molecules, and they can damage DNA, proteins, and cell membranes. Now, they are a natural byproduct of metabolism, but things like pollution, smoking, and even stress can increase their production.
So how does direct bilirubin fit into all of this?
Well, direct bilirubin has been shown to be a potent scavenger of these free radicals. It can actually neutralize them, preventing them from causing harm to our cells.
So it's like direct bilirubin is our body's built-in defense system against oxidative stress.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And there's more and more evidence that this antioxidant effect of direct bilirubin might actually have implications for a whole range of health conditions, including heart disease, stroke, and even some types of cancer.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So something we thought of as a waste product might actually be protecting us.
It really is. It's a perfect example of how our bodies can use seemingly simple substances in very complex and interconnected ways.
It makes you appreciate the intricate design of the human body, that's for sure.
It does. And it also highlights how important it is to look beyond the surface and understand the roles that different molecules play in our overall health.
So given what we now know about direct bilirubin's antioxidant properties, does that change how we think about managing bilirubin levels?
Well, it's definitely an area where there's a lot of ongoing research, and there's still a lot we don't know. But it does raise some interesting questions. For instance, if slightly elevated direct bilirubin levels might actually be beneficial in some cases, should we be so quick to try to lower them?
It's like we're shifting our perspective
Yeah.
from just getting rid of something we thought was bad to potentially harnessing its benefits.
Exactly. It's a reminder that our understanding of the body is always evolving, and what we once considered a waste product might turn out to be a valuable asset.
This has been an incredible journey. We've learned so much about direct bilirubin and its impact on our health. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
I think the main takeaway is this: knowledge is power. The more we understand about our bodies, the better equipped we are to make informed decisions about our health.
Absolutely. So to our listeners, keep asking questions, stay curious, and never stop learning. And until next time, happy diving.
You've been listening to the Learning Podcast, a production of metaNESTA. Remember, learning is a journey, one step, one insight, one skill at a time. We'll see you next time. Keep learning, stay curious, and as always, be awesome.